Hello friends, I am Aditi. Welcome to my channel Library Mouse. Today I am going to read a book, How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. This book contains 12 chapters, so let's continue with chapter 12, Improving Your Diction. An Englishman without employment and without financial reserves was walking the streets of Philadelphia seeking a position. He entered the office of Mr. Paul Gibbons, a well-known businessman of that city, and asked for an interview. Mr. Gibbons looked at the stranger distrustfully. His appearance was emphatically against him. His clothes were shabby and threadbare, and over all of him were written large the unmistakable signs of financial distress. Half out of curiosity, half out of pity, Gibbons granted the interview. At first, he had intended to listen for only a moment, but the moments grew into minutes, and the minutes mounted into an hour, and the conversation still continued. It ended by Mr. Gibbons telephoning to Mr. Roland Taylor, the Philadelphia manager for Dillon, Reed and Company, and Mr. Taylor, one of the leading financiers of that city, invited this stranger to lunch and secured for him a desirable position. How was this man, with the air and outward appearance of failure, able to effect such a prized connection within so short a time? The secret can be divulged in a single phrase: his command of the English language. He was in reality an Oxford man who had come to this country on a business mission which had ended in disaster, leaving him stranded, without funds and without friends. But he spoke his mother tongue with such precision and beauty that his listeners soon forgot his rusty shoes, his frayed coat, his unshaven face. His diction became an immediate passport into the best business circles. This man's story is somewhat extraordinary, but it illustrates a broad and fundamental truth, namely, that we are judged each day by our speech. Our words reveal our refinements. They tell the discerning listener of the company we have kept. They are the hallmarks of education and culture. We have only 4 contacts with the world, you and I. We are evaluated and classified by 4 things: by what we do, by how we look, by what we say, and by how we say it. Yet many a person blunders through a long lifetime after he leaves school without any conscious effort to enrich his stock of words, to master their shades of meaning, to speak with precision and distinction. He comes habitually to use the overworked and exhausted phrases of the office and street. Small wonder that his talk lacks distinction and individuality. Small wonder that he often violates the accepted traditions of pronunciation, and that he sometimes transgresses the very canons of English grammar itself. I have heard even college graduates say ain't and he don't, and between you and I, and if people with academic degrees gracing their names commit such errors, what can we expect of those whose education has been cut short by the pressure of economic necessity? Years ago, I stood one afternoon daydreaming in the Colosseum at Rome. A stranger approached me, an English colonial. He introduced himself and began talking of his experiences in the Eternal City. He had not spoken 3 minutes until he had said, "Yours," and I done. That morning, when he arose, he had polished his shoes and put on spotless linen in order to maintain his own self-respect and to win the respect of those with whom he came in contact. But he had made no attempt whatever to polish his phrases and to speak spotless sentences. He would have been ashamed, for example, of not raising his hat to a woman when he spoke. But he was not ashamed. No, he was not even conscious of violating the uses of grammar, of offending the ears of discriminating auditors. By his own words, he stood revealed and placed and classified. His woeful use of the English language proclaimed to the world continually and unmistakably that he was not a person of culture. Dr. Charles W. Eliot, after he had been president of Harvard for a third of a century, declared, "I recognize but one mental acquisition as a necessary part of the education of a lady or a gentleman, namely an accurate and refined use of the mother tongue." This is a significant pronouncement. Ponder over it. But how, you ask? Are we to become intimate with words, to speak them with beauty and accuracy? Fortunately, there is no mystery about the means to be employed, no legerdemain. The method is an open secret. Lincoln used it with amazing success. No other American ever wove words into such complex patterns or produced with pores such matchless magic. With malice towards none, with charity for all, was Lincoln, whose father was a swiftless, illiterate carpenter and whose mother was a woman of no extraordinary attainments. Was he endowed by nature with this gift for words? There is no evidence to support such an assumption. When he was elected to Congress, he described his education in the official records at Washington with one adjective: defective. He had attended school less than 12 months in his entire life, and who had been his mentors? Zachariah Birney and Caleb Hazel in the forests of Kentucky, Azel Dorsey and Andrew Crawford along Pigeon Creek in Indiana. Eternal pedagogists, all of them, drifting from one pioneer settlement to another, eking out an existence wherever a few scholars could be found who were willing to exchange hams and corn and wheat for the 3 R's. Lincoln had major assistants, little of uplift or inspirations from them, and little, too, from his daily environment. The farmers and merchants, the lawyers and litigants with whom he associated in the English Judicial District of Illinois possessed no magic with words, but Lincoln did not, and this is the significant fact to remember. Lincoln did not squander all his time with his mental equals and inferiors. He made boon companies out of the elite minds, the singers, the poets of the ages. He could repeat from memory whole pages of Burns and Byron and Browning. He wrote a lecture on Burns. He had one copy of Byron's poems for his office and another for his home. The office copy had been used so much that it fell open whenever it was lifted to Don John. Even when he was in the White House and the tragic burdens of the Civil War were spaying his strength and itching deep flaws in his face, he often found time to take a copy of Wood's poems to bed. Sometimes he woke in the middle of the night and, opening the book, he chanced upon verses that especially stirred and pleased. Getting up, clad only in his nightshirt and slippers, he stole through the halls until he found his secretary and read to him poem after poem. In the White House, he found time to repeat long, memorized passages from Shakespeare, to criticize the actor's reading of them, to give his own individual interpretation. "I have gone over some of Shakespeare's plays," he wrote Hackett, the actor, "perhaps as frequently as any unprofessional reader. Lear, Richard III, Henry VIII, Hamlet, and especially Macbeth. I think nothing equals Macbeth. It is wonderful. Lincoln was devoted to verse. Not only did he memorize and repeat it, both in private and public, but he even eased to write it. He read one of his long poems at his sister's wedding. Later, in middle life, he filled a notebook with his original compositions, but he was so shy about these creations that he never permitted even his closest friend to read them. This self-educated man, writes Robinson in his book, Lincoln as a man of letters, clothed his mind with the materials of genuine culture, call it genius or talent. The process of his attainment was that described by Professor Emerton in speaking of the education of Erasmus. He was no longer at school, but was simply educating himself by the only pedagogical method which ever yet produced any results anywhere, namely by the method of his own tireless energy in continuous study and practice. This awkward pioneer, who used to chuck, comb, and butcher hogs for 31 cents a day on the Pigeon Creek farms of Indian, delivered at Gettysburg one of the most beautiful addresses ever spoken by mortal man. 170,000 men fought there. 7,000 were killed. Yet Charles Sumner said shortly after Lincoln's death that Lincoln's addresses would live when the memory of the battle was lost, and that the battle would one day be remembered largely because of the speech. Who will doubt the correctness of his prophecy? Edward Everett spoke for 2 hours at Gettysburg. All that he said has long since been forgotten. Lincoln spoke for less than 2 minutes. A photographer attempted to take his picture while delivering the speech, but Lincoln had finished before the primitive camera could be set up and focused. Thank you so much for listening it, and I hope it is understandable to you. If you enjoy watching my videos, do like, subscribe and share with your family and friends. Thank you.